Good morning, YouTube. Welcome back to a beautiful day at the end of winter in Nutkin Farm. Well, I could say what a year it's been, because literally it's been a year since I undertook this life-changing project and bought myself a macadamia farm. And as I promised in an earlier video, I said I'd do a retrospective of how it had gone, whether it met my expectations, the surprises, the pitfalls, that sort of thing. But ultimately answer the question that I set out to answer for myself, and that is, could you farm a macadamia farm as a lifestyle option? Now, to understand where I'm coming from, I need to give you some personal background. I have a terrible sense of direction that changed my life. I'm a barrister by trade, but back when I was a solicitor in the very late 90s, I was sent to a local court hearing at Murwillumbah. Just a little thing, didn't take very long. I found my way there, thankfully, did the hearing, and then I had about 5 hours to kill before the flight back. So I thought I'd go for a drive in my hire car. And, back in those days, telephones were for making phone calls, and there was no Google Maps or any other mapping tool, and there wasn't a paper map in the car. So, perhaps not surprisingly, I got lost. I ended up in a little place called Nutkin and happened to drive past one of my favourite coffee bean suppliers, Zenfeld's, and I thought, this is great. How lucky am I? So I went in there and I actually had a cup of coffee on the veranda with the owner, John Zenfeld, and looked over his coffee plantation and the surrounding areas. And I just said, this is wonderful. Most people coming to the Northern Rivers just go to the beaches. They don't think of actually heading inland where the real treasure is. And I said to him, you're growing coffee, but the places all around here seem to be growing macadamias. Anyway, John laughed and said, that's all those doctors and lawyers from Sydney who are, doing it as a tax write-off. And I didn't have the heart to tell him I was a lawyer, so, I sympathised with him and said, yeah, those damn lawyers, what do they do? And so I'm taking mental notes as fast as I could. And he said, well, macadamias take 8 years to crop. So these people come along, buy up some land, plant it with macadamias, and then incur taxable losses for 8 straight years. Then they retire, bring forward all the taxable losses, and that's their, and that's just as the first harvest is coming in, and bingo, there's their tax-free retirement income. And I thought, this is brilliant. I want to do this. And obviously tried not to look too excited at this information, and then went on my merry way with a grand retirement plan of doing just that. But at some point, when I got empty nested by my children, as children inevitably do, you start asking, the question that no parent dares ever ask, which is, well, what do I want to do? And it seemed sad, if not pathetic, to run your life by the tax office. And I thought, well, look, I'm a long way from retirement, but who knows what kind of health I'm going to be in then. And, I might, go under a bus waiting for that to happen. So why not do it now and try to manage? And a barrister's life can be very much an irregular diary thing. You can have periods of free time. You can have periods where you're working 60, 70 hours a week. And it's those periods of free time that I spend on Nutkin Farm, having an absolutely beautiful time, rather than sitting at home cooling my heels and not doing anything very productive. So, I had help investigating the farm, as I said, from an agronomist. I also got in touch with Garth, who runs the Australian Macadamia channel, and that's the place where you really should be going for the best information on macadamia farming. One of the videos he made that worried me was his video entitled along the lines of "Macadamia farming is not a lifestyle choice." And I've obviously tried to farm macadamias as a lifestyle choice myself, so it really sort of, I think, depends on definitions. A hobby farm is defined by the Oxford Dictionary as a farm that you do for pleasure rather than profit. And it's also got a negative connotation with the tax office, because the days of you buying a paddock somewhere and putting a pony in it for your daughter have long passed. You can't claim those costs as a tax write-off. They're called non-commercial losses. But where you buy a commercial farm and you try and run that for profit, may not make as much as your day job, but it's a genuine business. Well, that is something different, and that's where I fit the definition of lifestyle farm. You've got the ability to make a profit, but you may not in fact make one immediately, or that sort of thing. So on that definition of lifestyle farm, can you do it, and what's involved? And I suspect anyone searching for this video via Google may be considering the same sort of thing themselves. The answer to that question, I think, having a year's experience now, all 4 seasons, depends on 2 factors. One is the amount of time and work you're willing to put into it yourself, and 2, the price of macadamias. And I'll explain why. Firstly, in terms of the time you have to put into it yourself, I started out with the grand notion of, I can do everything myself, I'll just fit it in. I think, like a lot of busy human beings, we fall into the trap of thinking there's always time to fit something else in. This is probably why we got busy in the first place. And, you can kid yourself all you like, but at the end of the day, there's only one of you and there's sort of limited resources. Obviously, if you've got a family around to help, that can change the equation a little bit. There's a balance between how much you do yourself, of course, and how much you outsource. And that can go anywhere from outsourcing the entire management of the farm in exchange for either a share of the crop or even a leasehold arrangement where someone leases the farm from you and then runs it. So you basically get to go up to your property and look at the pretty trees and do not much else, through to various stages of getting contractors in for specific tasks. And those include fertiliser spreading, spraying, preparing the orchard floor for harvesting, and the actual harvesting itself. So there are all those levels in between, and you need to find the right level for you. Obviously, hiring contractors means paying someone a profit margin for their labour and their use of their own machinery. And that profit margin, of course, comes off the top of any nut harvest that you get. And so that's why the price of macadamias then becomes important. I would argue that macadamia's current prices, which are around about $6 a kilo for the standard nut in shell, certainly allow you to farm with the use of contractors to an extent. I think you draw the line, or I personally draw the line, at mowing, which is a very regular task and is in fact the biggest task you do on a macadamia farm. I've just had this will be my 5th day up here, and I've just spent the first 3 mowing. I'm now happy with the state of the grass around the place, and in winter it's something you can get on top of. It's certainly quicker if you stay on top of it rather than let it get out of control like I did in January. However, when you do the mowing, you're saving yourself sometimes thousands of dollars in contractor costs, because that's something regularly done throughout the year. The rest of it, they're one-offs. Spraying, you might get done 4 or 5 times a year. Fertilising 3-4 times a year, possibly 5. And the harvesting, well, that gets done about once a month, or a little more often during the months of sort of March through to July. These are costs that at the current price a lifestyle farmer can absorb, so long as you've got, you know, a reasonable crop. You know, 1,000 trees I think would be a very marginal proposition. I've got between 2,500 and 3,000 trees, which will do okay. In my first financial year I won't break even, but that's partly because many of the crop payments are coming in this financial year rather than last. So, you know, next year might be a different story. And of course I'll have had a whole year of being able to rehabilitate a sick farm back into health and get some, you know, get a flowering season that will be from properly fed trees. So, is it possible? Yes, but, you know, you need to factor in that it is not, as Garth said in his video, which you should watch, it is not a matter of showing up, collecting the nuts, celebrating your winnings, and coming back next year and doing it all again. Trees look very static. They look like they look after themselves, but they don't. They do need some care and attention to crop at all, and they will reward that. At the moment, the rewards are rich. This is why, really, there are almost no macadamia farms in the Northern Rivers on the markets, particularly at that lifestyle level. And I've done videos on the state of the macadamia market, and I will do an update on that separately. But suffice to say, I feel lucky that I got this place after only a year of searching, particularly with macadamia prices the way they are, because, you know, just other than being a pretty place, it's also a commercial farm. So bear those things in mind if you're actually thinking about doing this. How much time are you willing to spend? I can spend, you know, sometimes 10 days a month here, outside of the holiday periods when I can spend more. And I'm fairly busy during that time. Other farms might be slightly easier to manage, but offer less commercial return. And as a general rule of thumb, the greater the number of trees, the more work there is. But there are other factors too, including the slope of the farm, how easy the land is to work, that kind of thing. So, look, I mean, the other thing is, I should say, I have no regrets. I'd do this 100 times over. You know, if you're in a position like me, then I'd say definitely go for it. If you can afford it, if you can get the finance to do it. It's a good business venture, particularly while the prices remain high. Production numbers around the world are increasing, but demand is also increasing with the increasing veganisation of Western populations. Macadamia nuts have a lot of the nutrients that non-meat eaters love to get into their system, and of course it's a lovely nut to eat. Right, well, I'm going to spend my energy on climbing this hill back up to the farmhouse and leave you with it. Hope you're having as beautiful a day as I'm having. It'll get to about 22 degrees here, which is just about right. Thanks for watching, and I will be back with you again soon. Bye for now.